So here we are with reforms in cultures. I'm going to call this Unit 8, and this is where it goes on your chart. So as a byproduct, a direct byproduct of industrialization and urbanization, that a lot of people are living in these very large cities and pretty much squalor, it's pretty not great conditions, and people decide they want some change. So in the late 1840s and into the 1850s, leading up to the Civil War, a lot of movements are started. Some of these things like the temperance movement, which was just the movement to ban alcohol because male workers would get off work from the factory that they were working in, or wherever they were working, and they would go to the bars and they would take the money that they earned for their family that day and instead buy alcohol and drink it and come home and become abusive towards their spouses or their children. Some women had enough of it, so they work to get alcohol banned or made illegal in the United States, and it actually does happen. In 1919, I believe, alcohol becomes banned in America for about 10 or 11 years. We also have the women's rights movements, which starts at Seneca Falls because women feel like they're being mistreated, and they want equal rights to men. Okay, and we also have this huge one right here dealing with slavery called the abolitionist movement. And this is from one of the abolitionist newspapers, The Liberator, by William Lloyd Garrison, which talked about abolishing the practice of slavery in the United States. And it starts picking up movement, or it starts picking up steam, this movement does, during this time period, because more and more people are becoming modernized and they're starting to identify with these groups that are out there for social justices and things like that. So out of here, some of the questions that are arising is, should every child be able to go to school? And we get the educational movement led by Horace Mann, which eventually makes it mandatory for children to go to school instead of having to work in the factories or working in the fields, things like that. So we get mandatory education. Should women be equal to men? That's another question. Should there be laws against child labor? These are all questions. These are all reforms. They're reshaping things because of these movements. All right. Should slavery be allowed? And that's that abolition, especially in those new states in the West, because America, through westward expansion, and as far as 1848, had acquired a huge amount of territory, which is modern day California, Arizona, New Mexico, Kansas, all these areas. And so here's that idea. Hey, should we allow slavery in these new territories once they become states? And that's a question that's leads all the way into the Civil War. All right. Also during this time in the abolitionist movement, we get literature that comes out. Uncle Tom's Cabin directly and explicitly talks about the slavery and the horrors of slavery, and it sheds a light on it. And so people read that book and they're like, oh my goodness, this is horrible. We need to do something about it. And the Underground Railroad is found at this time to help slaves reach the northern states to where they can be free. Also during this time, we get these crazy compromises dealing with slavery because America starts dividing itself into distinct sections and ideals, and the North has the way they want to run the country, and the southern states, they want to run it a different way, and the western states are just kind of like, oh, well, we just kind of want to do our own thing. So there's three distinct regions, and they all have their different ideas, and so nobody can agree on anything, and it's especially in the United States government, so they have to keep compromising. So we get things like the Compromise of 1850, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, and the Fugitive Slave Act, which comes after the Compromise of 1850, and there's bloodshed that starts happening, and this is all leading up to America just becoming this boiling mixture of emotions and people who believe in their own ideals. And again, we're divided, and these ideas are eventually going to boil over, which leads into the Civil War.